we need to wrest back the time that has been stolen from us through technology. The dreams of AI and even emails, back in the day of AOL, it's like, wow, we're going to get so much done. We didn't consider is that the speed at which we get things done, it's just going to snowball. And it is snowballing. And we are becoming the machines that we have created. And the human body is rebelling.
Julia, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
You've lived such a unique and layered journey, from studying classics at the highest level to becoming a fiction writer to now leading a 30-year-old family wellness brand in a completely modern landscape. What I find so fascinating is how all of those worlds, ancient philosophy, storytelling, psychology, seem to inform the way you think about leadership, wellness, and human behavior today. You didn't just step into Earth Therapeutics, you returned to it with a completely different lens, shaped by decades of experience, and that perspective is incredibly rare. I'm really excited to unpack how all of that has shaped the way you lead, build, and think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of excited to unpack it as well, analytically. So it is multi-layered, as you say, and I always feel like I'm on, the threshold, or I'm a very liminal person. And I think that it has shaped my perspective, always being like on the periphery of a culture or of a situation or of a group. I spent 18 years in London as well. So I'm like a double immigrant. But it does all of those experiences have definitely come into play.
Well, let's start at the very beginning. Growing up, what early vision did you have for your life, and how has that evolved?
This is a fascinating question, because I was actually thinking about this very question in the shower this morning. One of my biggest questions, philosophically, has been, the dichotomy between fate and free will, and how much agency do we have in this life, and how much can we craft and sculpt it, and how much can we not, that we have to kind of work around certain things that are just given to us at our birth. And I think the American dream, which is very much thematic of my life and my family's business, is all about sculpting yourself. Coming from a country like Korea, where women really at that point didn't have a lot of rights, or they were definitely like subalternate to men. And also, it was very much of a hierarchical system. And I think the attraction of coming to this country in the early 70s was that you didn't need any of that. You can kind of like just kick that away, kick that scaffolding away, come here and just do what, you want to do, and hard work will get you there. And so, yeah, I mean, we all had that vision. My parents had that vision. I guess for myself, I always had a vision of more so than a vision. I had more of a curiosity. I was always intensely curious about things, and I would expect people to give me answers, to certain questions, and I would get to college and, I would ask these questions and professors couldn't give me these answers and books couldn't give me these answers. And so I was just always just questioning and curious. And I think that curiosity just kind of led me here. Yeah, vision is an interesting thing, especially as of late, like post-COVID. Like sometimes I feel like, wrenches are thrown from left field like a pandemic, right? And sometimes, you have a vision, but sometimes you can't realize that vision and you have to go on certain detours. And so I think even though I may have had a vision, I think I've had to become a bit more flexible, and live more in the kind of, think about what is it I'm going to do this week or this month, as opposed to 5 years, because we don't know, where we're going to be in 5 years. I mean, I think this, where the world is now and the administration. I mean, it's just every day you wake up and you're like, okay, what what is this crazy thing that we're going to have to deal with? So sorry if that's a convoluted response to your question about vision, but these days I think we need to be a bit more flexible, or we end up kind of beating ourselves up.
I think that was such a wonderful answer. And it's actually a brand new perspective that I haven't heard before. Because it's true, when you have a very strict idea of what success means and what the overall vision of your life has to be in order for you to feel successful, I feel that oftentimes you'll feel overwhelmed and maybe even a little defeated if it's not, playing out the exact way that you had thought it was going to. Because I think another thing that we do as part of that rigidness with our visions is we create these arbitrary deadlines.
Okay.
But you mentioned something really interesting, Julia. You mentioned detours. And I like that you said that word, because I think that oftentimes what feels like a detour on our way to our vision, we can look back and in retrospect almost always acknowledge why we had to go through what we did, because it prepared us for where we are now. What detours, so to speak, do you feel that you experienced, but really were actually setting you up for where you are now?
Many detours, some which I had no control over, just by dint of my age. When I was 4 years old, and I was on a plane, a Pan Am airline, heading to Flushing, New York. And certain moves, we moved to Manhasset, which is a suburb. I think the main one that I feel like I had some agency in was I wanted to be a journalist for a very long time. And so I started studying journalism, and I was like, I don't want my work that I spend so much time on turning into like kitty litter liner or like yesterday's news so quickly. I want it to be eternal. I want it to last if I'm going to put so much work into it. And that became very important for me. And I became obsessed with trying to understand what a classic was. Why is it that, we read Sophocles, still, in humanities courses, which will be gone soon. But anyway, in the current humanities courses, if you're taking like like a literature humanities intro course, why do we still read Homer? And, after thousands of years, what is it about these texts? What makes a classic? What is it about a piece of art like a Rembrandt or Botticelli? And I became very curious about those questions. So that was my detour. Then I was at the University of Chicago, which is, the big egghead school. Well, it was back then, it's since evolved into something else. But, and I suddenly want to know everything with this fervor. It's like I felt like the earliest or the furthest back I could go to was the classics, Western classics. And I was like, okay, if this is what it's going to take, this is what I'm going to do. And I started studying, ancient Greek and Latin. I applied to a graduate program. So that was my first detour. My second detour was once I was ensconced in academia, in a PhD program to study Latin and Greek. I realized just the reality of that situation was not exactly in accordance with my vision. Academia, it's, I have great reverence for it, and I have a lot of gratitude for what it gave me. But I felt like it was very political, and that I didn't really have the freedom to be as creative in the things that I produced. They were quite rigid, and the department I chose ended up being very rigid. So I don't know. I think there's a theme emerging about rigidity here, and I'm always trying to escape rigidity. So, but I think I had always fostered the secret desire to write and to be creative, and so there was another detour. I jumped ship and applied to an MFA program at NYU in fiction, and everyone, like, no one knew. Like, they were like, what has gotten into her? She's this is madness, because I never shared with anyone this desire to write, and so I was leaving this very cushy PhD program. I was given this, I had a really nice fellowship and a good stipend, and I just left, and I was renting this very small studio. I was go run to the reservoir at Central Park, run, come back, write. Applied to the NYU MFA program, got rejected the first time, and tried again, and then I got in. And so I ended up in this world of fiction. It's completely different than, you think it's writing, but it's not just writing. It's analytical academic writing. It's diametrically opposite almost to creative writing, and you just have to kind of let go of control, and even some of the sentence structures, and like, you can't sound like an academic, and so that was a whole sort of rewiring, I think, of how I wrote, and the freedom that I had to, like, reteach myself, and learning kind of how to let go, and sometimes fiction writing is like somewhat channeled. I know that there are two types of writers. There are plotters, someone who outlines everything. And then there are pantsers who write off the seat of their pants, definitely the latter. And then, the next detour was having met my husband, and he's in the music industry. And he's like, listen, I have an opportunity to go to London, and let's go. And I was like, how different could it be? We both speak English. And it was like, these assumptions, very, 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 very different. And I think it's like these assumptions of, that writing is going to be the same in academia and fiction, or, English is going to be the same, in English culture and in American culture. And it's these assumptions, I feel like, that kind of have sort of tripped me up. And that I have had to learn the hard way that no, these are very different things. And then the next detour was becoming a mother, which I never planned. And that was massive. Yeah.
And how did all these experiences prepare you for the role you are in currently at Earth Therapeutics?
Yeah. I was at Earth Therapeutics when my brother John was starting the company in the early 90s. And I was, while I was in my MFA program, I was working there part time, doing PR. And business was so foreign to me, even though like I watched my parents, set up the business and I was privy to it. It was something that I was not interested in at all. I just was doing it just to kind of support myself. And um, um, but back then in the early 90s, PR was a completely different game. It was like you went. It was very personal. You took your beauty editor from Vogue to lunch at the plaza, and you showed her your products, um um and but then I left and I lived in London for 20 years or 18 years. I was a full-time mother. And within that interval, PR became a whole different thing, especially with the pandemic having intervened. And also during the pandemic, I think with beauty marketing, like that became like this crazy behemoth that was like so rapidly like changing every 2 weeks. And um, I think that, you know, at the age that I was out of the workforce for many years, 18 years, I was full-time momming it. So to be given this opportunity to come back to work at the age of my early 50s, was scary, and it was something that I craved because I felt like my mind was atrophying a bit, or like I was kind of like using these defenses of this technology, or like the sort of my Luddite propensities. I was using them and just kind of putting my head in the sand. Like I was very terrified of AI and what it could possibly do. Even like five years ago, I was flipping out and living in dread that it could take over. Um, and and when I came back, it was like I had to learn all of these new platforms. Like back in London, I was still asking my husband, "Hey, what's my password?" I was still at that. I just technology was not something that I was embracing. And when I came back, I had to learn things very, very quickly and just understand. I was just thrown in the deep end of, what beauty marketing was like. And I don't know, I'm still rendered speechless, but especially in at the height of the pandemic with TikTok, really becoming, the main marketing tool, and trends changing, every 2 weeks. It was extraordinary. So I think that I have a unique perspective, like generationally, and also, always coming in as an outsider and trying to like, so I feel like I have to explain things to people. And I have always felt like I'm kind of a bridge of not only generation, but also of culture, of from the marketing department to the sales department, like telling them, guys, like this is what's going on. So it really is this I guess flexibility and learning and just wanting to keep my mind sharp, and yeah. So those are the reasons why I've kind of been been uh, been in the industry or returned to the industry. It's like there's this huge gap between people who are working and who are using these tools, and people who are older and who aren't using them every day. There's this huge gap in technology, and um, so I feel grateful, and also I'm constantly learning. I love learning, and I work with a much younger team, Gen X team, and they're fascinating. They're constantly teaching me things. They're very quick. I almost feel like evolutionarily they are different. And yeah, so that's my current situation with my job in PR now.
And Julia, how did you modernize a 30-year-old brand without diluting the values that made it successful in the first place? Because you're right. I mean, technology is changing all the time. Strategy has to adapt. What things change and what stays the same?
Yeah. This was a big challenge for me for many reasons. um, because Earth Therapeutics, which my brother came up with, it's not purely a beauty brand. It encompasses, foot care. That is actually, sort of the iconic aspect of our identity. Things like massage lotion. It's sort of a wellness line, and we ended up um, um, through happy accident being one of the first people to bring in K beauty to Ulta with the sheet masks, and also we have that connection with our Korean, identity, and we've been doing business with Korea, and so the way that PR not our current PR team, which is great, but our previous PR team um, just wanted to, market us as a beauty company, and like, no, but this just so much more than that. But they were like, no, this is what's working, and this is what you're going to do, like I felt very cookie cuttered. I felt like, the company was cookie cuttered, my thoughts were cookie cuttered, my vision was cookie cuttered, and it was very frustrating. And I really had to fight for like a statement of asserting, a statement of who we were through the marketing and the social media, that we are a wellness brand. We want to cater to athletes, to college students, to our diehard fans who are, late millennials, to men, to women, and so I guess ultimately what I had to do was decide very specifically to serve the identity that my brother had come up with when he conceived of the brand. And that, fine, now there are all these trends and that's great. But if we're not aligned with who we are, confidently, we're just going to be a copycat. And really, I'm allergic to being a copycat. Like intrinsically, I don't know what it is, but like, uh, and just serving, my brother's vision of that we serve, like that we're affordable and we're accessible. We're not a luxury brand. We're always accessible. Perfect price point. Everyone can afford us, but it's quality, And so I I think I just had to hitch on to like the authenticity of our identity and my brother's vision of the identity of the company and the pillars which he had come up with and which he consistently still serves, which is like we're ingredient driven. We have the best ingredients. We like if we're formulating like um, a foot product, we're going to use ingredients like tea tree oil that um, like naturally take care of things like foot bacteria and foot odor. Um, Also, our tools, like our sponges and form follows function. We're not going to put in anything gratuitous. Like it does what it says on the tin, and the quality is exceptional. And even though, you might find the same kind of commodity type item on Amazon for half the price, it's worth paying for Earth Therapeutics sponge because, we have the connections, we have the quality assurance with factories and manufacturers whom we've been doing business with for 50 years, and so we can guarantee that quality assurance upfront, within what you purchase. So I guess, to get back to your question about, up a 30-year-old brand, it's just, sticking to your guns about who you are, and also, basing any kind of innovation on tradition. Like I truly believe, and this my classics comes in here is it's like if you're anything new, like any new novel idea has to have like a foundation on which it is secured, like a tradition on which it's secured. Otherwise, it's going to kind of spin out. So, and I think if you have a good product and you know who you are, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know. You kind of like weather the booms and the busts, and people find you. So college students are finding us now, and they're like, "Oh, you're Earth Therapeutics. My mother has your. I grew up with my mother using your foot lotion every night," and they're making that connection. So. And also as a business, I think it's all about trust, isn't it? It's like when you go into business with someone, they're investing something really valuable. You're investing something really valuable. And if you can't trust the other person, it's a very vulnerable situation. But, if you do what you say you're going to do, and they do what they say they're going to do, even though there's a lot of money and a lot of stuff, valuable stuff at stake, it works out. And if you're consistent about, being loyal in that bond, over 30 years, they're going to trust you, and, your business is safe. For instance, like we've been doing business with Ulta for over 30 years. Earth Therapeutics was one of the first brands in Ulta when there were only 8 stores. There are over like 4,000 something stores now. And so we're like definitely OG to them, but it's through trust. I mean, I'm sure there have been myriad bath and body care lines who would want to take our position there. But yeah, it's because of the relationship. Like they know who we are. They know that like if, they need a shipment and we told them we would, get a certain amount on a certain date, it's going to be there. Even if like we have to fly it in and take a loss, we are going to be true to our word in our contract. And so like building relationships has been really important. So yeah, our identity as a company, our pillars, and also the way we conduct business, I think is classical. This is the kind of stuff that out sort of withstands time.
And Julia, you've said the biggest crisis in America isn't beauty, but health, including mental health. Where do you think the wellness industry gets this wrong?
The wellness industry is based on business, and business is based on profits, right? And so in order to profit in a very competitive environment, you have to promise things and create products that are maybe a quick fix, I think that the speed with which people expect change, people expect to feel better. Yeah, maybe, fine, a lipstick can do that. But as far as like wellness, I think there's a real over dependence on medication, because that's a quick fix. And we've gotten ourselves into quite a pickle, I think, because, people start taking, one medication and there are, yeah, it may alleviate the symptoms that, you're dealing with, or suffering. But I think there are side effects for which you take other medication, and so on and so on and so on. And I'm not a medical doctor, so I say this prudently, but I feel like maybe being over medicated may cause problems that are greater than the original suffering. And I just sense it in my gut. And it's all profit driven. Um, I think we have to remember that we are human beings with a human body, and that we really need, and that the human body has its own schedule and its own time, and that it takes time to process things. It takes time to process a conversation you have with a friend, or something profound you see in the news, or it takes time to process a proper meal. And I feel like what the wellness industry really needs to do is tell the truth, which is hard to do when you're trying to sell and make profit. But the fact that we need time, we need to wrest back the time that has been stolen from us through technology. The dreams of AI and even email. Back in the day of AOL, it's like, wow, we're going to get so much done. But I feel like we didn't consider is that the speed at which we get things done, it's just going to snowball. And it is snowballing. And we are becoming the machines that we have created. And the human body is rebelling, you know? So I feel like it's a combination of technology and the over reliance on quick fix medications, and the enormous, profit that big pharma takes from Americans and the world at large. So that's my honest answer.
And you mentioned that the body is rebelling. Can you give us a few examples of what you mean and how people can navigate that or overcome that?
You've binge watched a series on Netflix, 8 episodes in a row, while checking emails and what, trying to do work. I don't know. Um, it doesn't give your mind time to process, and then you try to go to sleep at night, and no wonder why you can't sleep, right? Like, it's all this like this bolus that's like hardened, and there's no way to like process it. And I think people have become very anxious about even being in solitude or in quiet. It's quite unnerving. But I think that's what we need again, being able to kind of take a walk after dinner without listening to something, just, it's very cyclic. It's like, breathing in and out, like everything about the human body is like constriction, and like it follows the breath. So imagine if you're constantly like taking things in, you never really get to like, exhale. And so, I mean, that's just a symbol of I think how we should go about our life. Like sometimes we really need like a day off, just to decompress. I know that like reset is a buzzword now, and I think that people are craving that, this sort of reset, and it just kind of like just falling back into like our normal like circadian rhythms, uh an artist friend of mine did an experiment where he was like, okay, I'm just going to start going to sleep when, my body feels tired, and just naturally like kind of finding out the rhythms of your body, and really reconnecting with that bodily instinct, instead of like going on TikTok and finding out from, 50 influencers, you do this, you do that, you take melatonin, you take magnesium, it's this ritual and that ritual. And then your head is like filled with all these things you feel like you need to do, the right way. And it's counterproductive. Uh, and the body is going to insist on just quiet or communing with nature, really simple things to restore.
Why do you believe foot health is actually foundational to mobility, aging, and overall quality of life?
Have you ever like worn like uncomfortable shoes?
Oh, yes.
And it's a beautiful day out and you're sightseeing, and like what it feels like when like the only thing you can think of is the pain in your feet. Like it like becomes like this kind of glaze over like
Yes.
the art of reflexology shows that that the soles of your feet are kind of like the control panel to your entire body. So reflexologists have this map that certain parts of the feet are connected to certain organs, and through massaging your feet, that you can actually affect these organs and your overall health. I think there's a lot of veracity to that, and I think that when you're not taking care of your feet, like for instance, if or not even not taking care, like if you get into an accident and you can't walk, and you're in bed for a while, I think your like psyche suffers a little, also your balance suffers, and then the rest of your body is like thrown off balance, and over time, like gradually, like things deteriorate. So the feet really are the foundation of everything, every movement that mobility wise. And so I feel like it's an important region, organs to take care of, and give some respect to. I don't know what it is, but like people just ignore their feet, maybe because they're not seen. or, they're covered over, or, there's this whole thing about like fetish, which I don't get. I really don't get. But, and also it's interesting because Western culture remember when I was growing up, like, and going to my friends' houses, they were like, oh yeah, they all wore shoes in the house. And, it wasn't, like, it wasn't, like washing your feet at night, which is like sort of an Eastern thing. It wasn't practiced in the West. And it makes a difference, like, if you kind of soak your feet, and it really calms you. So I feel like there needs to be more of an emphasis on how important the feet are. Like right now, I feel like they're ignored. I feel like there's a lot of weirdness around it for some reason. But what I've wanted to do is just to educate people on, like, it's really easy to take care of your feet, and, make it an intrinsic part, very easy intrinsic part of your shower, like 30 seconds. And we have some great products that would make you enjoy taking care of your feet.
And Julia, what is one thing somebody can do starting today that can help take care of their feet in 30 seconds in the shower, like you're mentioning?
Well, I have one of my favorite products, and this is not like, I'm not like pushing this product, but it's a foot wash mat, and it has bristles, and it has suction on the opposite side. So, it suctions to the floor of your shower or your bathtub. And we have uh, a foot shampoo. So instead of like bending, or, you slipping, like, it's a spray. I don't have it with me, but so you just, while you're standing up, you spray the shampoo onto the mat with the bristles, and you just move your foot back and forth, clean your soles, give yourself a really nice massage, and it kind of stimulates all the circulation too. And then when you're done, you just rinse it off under the shower water, and you can just kind of stick it on the wall of your shower. So it just kind of, it doesn't get moldy. And that's a really, like, just a fun and easy 30-second way of washing your feet without slipping or bending or straining. So that's something you can do. And you can also try a foot mask if you're courageous, which is you put on these these booties, these one-time use booties, and you wait a couple of hours, and then over 2 weeks, the skin and all the calluses, the hard skin is just going to peel off over time. So it's going to be like a snake. You're shedding your skin over 2 weeks, and it's very gradual and it's gentle, but it's like your feet being reborn.
And Julia, when you think about the future of wellness, what do you think needs to change most?
I think we need to give people very useful and honest information, but in a way that is very practical and easy to implement. That it doesn't turn into like a mountain, like in your mind, like, oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to run, 5 miles. Like, no. And we have this blog called Greetings Earthling, and the ethos of that blog is these micro things that you can do every day that you will have no excuse not to do. For instance, like you can take, instead of doing a full yoga session, you can do one yoga position and make it habitual. And after a certain point, after a couple of months, you're going to start missing not doing that yoga position. It's like not brushing your teeth. Like it's become a part of your morning or your evening, and then you're open. Now that it's rooted, then you can think, well, maybe I want to expand on this, and do two. And I really like the idea of just having very micro bite-sized things that don't become a big deal in your mind, because it's really the mind that deters you from doing these things. It's like, oh, I've had a hard day at work. Now I have to go home and row 20 minutes. No, just do something tiny, micro, and be satisfied with that. And I really feel like it's like compound interest. It adds up over time. And I truly believe, as an American, and this kind of comes full circle to what we had been talking about earlier about fate and free will. I feel like what you do every day is what you become. So if you do that yoga movement, which turns into two yoga movements, your body is going to become that. You are going to be the type of person who can commit to one yoga movement or more. We just instinctually know like what to do and what we need. And sometimes too much information that we're getting, it sort of occludes, like it sort of puts a lot of stuff between us and what we already know. And, ironically, that's what TikTok and, Instagram and all that content is about. It's about teaching. And I don't know, like, how much of that we really need, which is ironic because I started life really wanting to know everything. And what I've surprisingly concluded is that it's all that knowledge that kind of gets in the way of my own intuition. And that at the height of having read everything I needed to read, and, I was the type of person, like, if I wanted to know something, I would like order every book on Amazon, like without even thinking about it, because I had to get to the bottom of this. So ironically, what I learned is that now that I have this mental scaffolding, I could kind of kick it away. And I had, through my journey of trying to learn everything, learned that it was sort of the journey that was important, but, that ultimately I kind of knew in the end, just intrinsically what to do. And, Plato, getting back to Plato, I definitely need to have a snippet, like a soundbite about Plato. He believed that education it's called anamnesis. It wasn't about taking things in. It was about recalling. It was a memory, like we already have this memory within us. And it's about recalling that memory. And so when you think about things like meditation, it is being able to cultivate those quiet and empty times where, you're not being stuffed with knowledge or content. You're in fact giving yourself an opportunity to reconnect with that intrinsic memory that will tell you everything you kind of need to know. So I think that there are timeless things like meditation that really do help. I think, however, if you listen to a TikTok influencer talk about meditation, and then you try it for a couple of times on your own, and then you become discouraged because your life doesn't change. That's kind of there's a bit of a danger there. I think that it's really important for people to learn properly. Go to a class, go to a retreat where you're going to be forced to do it with people, day in day out, and be taught properly. And I think that a lot of what we hear and learn, we have to kind of employ it in practice and consistently. Like, we need to commit to it for, even if it's one yoga move, you need to commit to it for like a week or 2 weeks. Um, so truths like, needing times for ourselves to reconnect with ourselves through things like yoga, practices like meditation, which are, have been around for thousands of years. And really teaching and guiding through maybe in-person practice groups. Now that the world has, I think, fully opened up since COVID, we're more able to do that.
And Joya, what is the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
That there is such a thing as love. I mean, I was always a cynic. And it's pretty radical. And now I'm not talking about like motherly love or romantic love or the Greeks divide love into three things like passion, brotherly love, or the other one's not coming to me, but I think love in a very universal sense, that there is a force out there that I think once you experience it, you realize like it's not something that comes from us. It's a force that kind of infiltrates us, and when it does, we learn that we can give love to everyone, and it kind of spreads. And I mean, I feel like that was massively changing to the way I look at life, as having been a cynic for many years. So.
And Joya, where is the best place people can purchase Earth Therapeutics products?
Well, we'd love for them to purchase through our website, but it's also available at Ulta Beauty, which we've been with for 30 years. We very much support them. Walmart, and Target, and Whole Foods, and of course, Amazon.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to include the link to your website in the episode notes below. That way, anyone who's interested in checking out the brand and wants to shop around, purchase some products, you can easily do so by clicking below. And Julia, if you could go back in time and offer your younger self one bit of advice, specifically tailored to you and your life's trajectory right before you started your career, what would it be?
Trust the flow. It's going to take you to places where you need to go. Yeah, even places that you fear, just go.
Well, Julia, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was so much fun, and I really appreciate your time.
I had a really good time as well. And thank you so much for your thoughtful questions and giving me the time to answer.